This summer, our family went on a 2-week trip to Europe. We picked 3 must-visit cities on our list: Barcelona, Rome, and Istanbul. We were really excited to introduce our kids to Europe and explore these amazing cities. First up, we spent 5 days in Barcelona. Our adventure started with a long overnight flight where we hardly got any sleep and our kids got to experience pretty severe jet lag. We landed around 1 p.m. in Barcelona and set off to explore the Gothic Quarter while trying to stay awake until at least dinner time. Our Airbnb was right in the heart of the Gothic Quarter and overlooked a 14th century basilica and small town square. We were very close to the Cathedral of Barcelona, the Temple of Augustus, a 2,100-year-old Roman ruin that is now surrounded by an apartment building, and some more plazas. We made it to La Rambla for a stroll down the famous street before calling it a night. On the second day, we visited some of Barcelona's most famous sites. We started our day at Park Güell, which was designed by famous architect Antonio Gaudí. The park was developed in the 1910s and was initially meant to be a residential park with 60 single-family residences. But that project never came to fruition and was instead acquired by the city. In the park you can see some of Gaudí's whimsical designs, colorful tile mosaics, and large terraces overlooking the city. We quickly got Blake a haircut from a Barcelona barber, which was a fun experience. We then visited another of Gaudí's masterpieces, Sagrada Familia. Construction began in 1882 and is still not fully complete. When finished, it will be the tallest church in Europe. Gaudí devoted the remainder of his life to the work, but when he died, only 25% was complete. He is buried in the church's crypt. The church had huge, colorful stained glass windows that lit up the room in various colors as you walked around. We also visited one of the towers and walked down a long, spiral staircase.
On the next day, we took a day trip to Montserrat. When we got up early to catch a taxi, then a train, then a cable car to the top of the beautiful mountain. On top of the mountain is a monastery that has about 70 monks that reside there. While there, we visited the basilica and listened to the boys' choir perform. They're one of the oldest boys' choirs in Europe.
Montserrat also offers many hiking trails with stunning views. We completed a 1.5-mile trail that took us up the mountain to one of the higher points where we could look back on the basilica and see the valley below. After a long hike, we were ready for a nice seat on the train ride home, but instead the train was overcrowded and we stood for an hour. That evening, we headed to a flamenco performance where we got to watch a variety of dancers and musicians perform. The next morning, we visited another Gaudi building, Guelle Palace. This is one of his lesser-known buildings in the city, but we really enjoyed it. It had all of the familiar Gaudi architectural styles, including mosaics, interesting building materials, and unique features throughout. It was the private residence of the Guelle family and included its own church, a horse stable in the basement, and a rooftop with amazing views.
For lunch, we headed to the Mercado Boqueria. The market dates back to the 13th century. There are many vendors here selling fresh smoothies, meat, fruit, snacks, spices, and more. We had fun picking out lunch to eat and drinking some of the refreshing smoothies.
After our lunch, we headed to Barcelonetta Beach, where we had views of the famous W Hotel and got to dip our toes in the Mediterranean Sea for the first time. The water was a little chilly, and unfortunately was the only time that we saw rain during our entire trip. We then visited the Elborn Cultural Center, which was originally the largest cast iron covered market in Europe from the 1870s until 1970s. After that, it was essentially abandoned until the early 2000s when construction started to turn it into a library, but instead uncovered 18th century remains of Barcelona, which you can now view today. During our final day in Barcelona, we spent the morning at the Picasso Museum, which was the first museum dedicated to his work. It houses over 4,000 of his pieces. After that, Luke got a haircut and we visited the Park Ciutadella, where we saw the famous fountain, ponds, monuments, and a lot of palm trees. Around 4 p.m. we got a taxi to the cruise terminal where we boarded a 2-day cruise that would take us to Italy. This was a fun form of transportation for us to reach our next destination. While on the cruise, the kids had fun at the kids club and the water slide. We enjoyed our balcony overlooking the calm Mediterranean waters and saw lots of sea animals from our deck.